In the world of business, where success and leadership are often measured by bottom lines, personal charisma, and boardroom negotiations, one event stands out, leaving a lasting impression on all who witnessed it. It was an unusual day at the annual corporate gathering of a large multinational company where the leaders, employees, and partners were all gathered to celebrate the company's achievements and discuss its future. The event, held at a luxurious hotel, was meant to showcase the success of the business in the previous year, and its executives were there to share insights and give presentations. Among the top leaders was a dynamic, young black woman, Michelle Armstrong. Known for her exceptional leadership skills and strong sense of ethics, Michelle had been named the CEO of the company just 2 years ago. Her rise to power was no accident. She had worked her way up from the bottom, having started as an intern in the company years ago, and over time she had shown an uncanny ability to turn struggling departments into high-performing ones. She was tough, strategic, and always 3 steps ahead of her competitors. But what made her stand out was her ability to lead with empathy, determination, and a powerful sense of inclusiveness that resonated with everyone who worked for her. On this particular day, however, Michelle was about to experience a moment that would challenge her sense of professionalism and leadership in a way she hadn't anticipated. The evening started like any other corporate gathering, with speeches from top brass, handshakes, and the inevitable networking. The ambience was elegant and full of high-end socialites and business tycoons. After the speeches, there was dinner, and then the floor was opened up for light entertainment. One of the more peculiar ideas had come from an old colleague of Michelle's, Tom Hargrove, an executive from a long-standing partner company. Tom was known for his quirky sense of humor, which at times bordered on inappropriate. That evening, as the crowd mingled over drinks, he approached Michelle with a glint in his eye and a mischievous smile. "Michelle," he said, his voice low but filled with intrigue, "I've got a hilarious idea. You know the grand piano in the corner? It's been out of tune for years and no one plays it. I was wondering if you'd entertain us with a song. You're a woman of many talents, after all, right? Or are you just good at business?" Michelle's eyes narrowed slightly as she processed the suggestion. Tom's tone had been lighthearted, but there was an edge to it that hinted at something more. She knew well that sometimes people made jokes to put others in uncomfortable positions. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she felt uneasy. However, her leadership training and understanding of people told her not to back down easily. This was her moment to decide how she would handle such a situation. "You think I can play the piano?" Michelle asked, trying to gauge if there was any malice in his words. Tom chuckled, not realizing that he had just pushed a button. "I mean, you're a woman who can do everything. Why not add piano playing to the list? Besides, it's not like anyone can play that old thing. The piano's broken. But hey, it could be fun to see you try." The challenge was set. It was subtle but unmistakable. A challenge not just of her musical abilities, but of her poise and confidence in handling uncomfortable situations. Michelle smiled, not letting her guard down, and nodded. "I'll give it a shot," she said, her voice calm and collected. The crowd's attention turned toward her as she walked toward the piano. The room grew quiet, and the guests stood in hushed anticipation. Tom's grin widened. He was certain this would be a moment that would embarrass Michelle. The old grand piano in the corner of the room, while grand in appearance, was in disrepair. The keys, worn and yellowed, hardly moved when pressed. It was a broken instrument that had not been tuned in years, and it was notorious for producing more discord than harmony. It was the perfect setup for a joke at someone's expense. Michelle sat down at the piano, her fingers lightly touching the keys. She looked up at the crowd, her face calm, but her eyes sparkling with intent. For a moment, she said nothing. The silence was deafening. Her hands rested gently on the ivory keys, but she didn't play anything. It was almost as if she was allowing the awkwardness to settle in, to let the moment unfold. Then, with a deliberate movement, she pressed down on the first key. The sound was a horrible clatter, much like a discordant crash of metal on metal. The audience stifled a laugh, sensing that the piano was truly broken beyond repair. Tom's grin widened, and the other guests exchanged knowing looks. This was exactly what they had expected. Michelle could be the company's top CEO, but now she was being reduced to the punchline of a cruel joke. But Michelle, ever the strategist, was already thinking beyond the immediate discomfort. She leaned into the piano, her fingers moving across the keys with purpose, not trying to make music in the traditional sense, but to create something unexpected. The cacophony that followed was unlike any sound anyone had anticipated. Instead of trying to play a traditional tune or attempting to find harmony in the dissonance, she began to play in a way that mirrored the chaos, a blend of harsh, disjointed notes, each clashing against the next. It was deliberate, and it was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The guests, unsure of how to react, stood frozen. Michelle's hands moved like lightning over the broken keys, each movement bringing out a new layer of sound. She didn't play to make music in the conventional sense. Instead, she played to make a statement. The discordant sounds filled the room, louder than the whispers of the guests. It was a powerful act of defiance. She was showing them that sometimes, even when things are broken, you can still take control, and you can still command attention, not by fitting into the world's expectations, but by reshaping them. As the last note echoed, Michelle slowly lifted her hands from the piano and stood up. There was a stunned silence that followed. The entire room was speechless, as if the air had been sucked out of the space. Tom, whose grin had quickly faded, was the first to speak, though his voice lacked its previous mockery. "Well, that was something, Michelle," he said, his tone now unsure, almost respectful. The guests, who had been quick to judge her moments earlier, now looked at her in a new light. What they had expected to be an embarrassing moment had turned into a masterclass in leadership and grace under pressure. "I didn't come here to play the piano," Michelle said, her voice firm yet graceful. "But I'll always rise to the occasion. You can put me in any situation, no matter how broken or imperfect, and I'll still make it work." That's what leadership is: taking the mess, the chaos, and finding a way to make it your own. The crowd slowly started clapping, first a few hesitant claps, then more, until the entire room was applauding her, not just for her ability to handle a broken piano, but for her strength, composure, and brilliance in the face of adversity. Tom, humbled by the experience, stepped forward and extended his hand. "That was incredible, Michelle. You've got more than just business acumen. You've got something rare." Michelle smiled and shook his hand, her poise unwavering. "Thank you, Tom. I believe leadership is about inspiring others to see beyond the obvious and encouraging them to embrace what they have in front of them. Even a broken piano can create something beautiful if you play it the right way." From that moment forward, Michelle's reputation only grew. The story of the broken piano spread across the company and beyond, turning into a powerful metaphor for overcoming challenges. It was a reminder that true leadership wasn't about having everything perfect, it was about how you responded when things fell apart. And Michelle Armstrong had just proven, once again, that she was a leader who could handle anything life threw her way.